Welcome to A Learner's Journey. My name is Molly Sanders, and the goal of this podcast is to inspire and motivate you by connecting you with a variety of passionate horsewomen and men who have dedicated their lives to helping horses and their people. I'm grateful you're here. I'm excited to share with you a recent conversation I had with the fabulous Kristi Smith. Kristi has been a horsemanship coach for 15 years and is passionate about helping people achieve excellence in their partnership with their horses. We covered a wide variety of topics, and our conversation actually lasted over 2 hours, so I decided to break it into 2 parts. In this first part, you'll hear a bit about how Kristi's challenging childhood influenced the horsewoman she's become. We also explore the topic of emotional frequencies and how practicing joy can make us a better partner for our horses. I'm glad you're here, and I hope you enjoy part 1 of the conversation. Hi, Kristi.
Hey, Molly, good to see you.
Good to see you too. I'm really excited that you've decided to join me on the podcast.
I'm honored to be here.
Awesome. I've been thinking about reaching out to you, and then I get requests quite a bit for different people to interview, and your name keeps coming up. And
That's nice.
we know each other, and so I thought, well, I'll reach
Yeah.
out to her and see if she'll join in. So I really appreciate you being here. So one of the things that I love hearing about from people is how they got started. And I think a lot of times, like people that might know you really well, maybe there's things that they don't know about your beginning. So how did it all start?
Well, I was a lucky kid in one way and pretty unlucky in a lot of other ways. But I essentially grew up in family foster system. So I wasn't officially in the foster care system, but I got passed around inside of family through family members quite a bit as a kid. My parents should have never had children. They just were not, equipped to be good parents.
Right.
And they did the best they could, and I love them, but they sucked at it. And so luckily I had, an aunt in particular, my Aunt Peggy, is who I spent the most time with, and she had horses. And but also my mom's family are rodeo people. I have 2 aunts who went to the national finals in high school rodeo for barrel racing. My grandfather was a bull rider, and and then when he had all girls for kids, then he started training barrel horses. He's sort of regionally well known by people who barrel raced in like the 80s, right? So
Sure.
I doubt if you walked in a rodeo and used my grandfather's name right now, nobody would know. But
Right.
Back in the day, he was really well known, used to do a pretty good business on training and then campaigning the barrel horses with his daughters and then selling them for a profit and stuff like that. So it kind of runs in the genealogy. I grew up mostly just trail riding, though. I didn't spend a lot of time with my mom's family as a kid, but Aunt Peggy had horses, and we like to go trail riding. So
That's really cool.
It's like, for as long as I can remember, there was always a horse option. I might not have lived there, but I had a relationship with my Aunt Peggy that if things were tough I spent a lot of my early childhood with my dad. And if I didn't want to be there, I could easily say, "Hey, Dad, can I go to Aunt Peggy's today?" And he just assumed it was because I wanted to ride, and some of it was that. It was also an escape for me. And then I went to live with her when I was 12. So I spent like 12 through young adulthood with Aunt Peggy. So I always had a horse there. It was part of my childhood.
Wow. So she was basically like down the road, like you could get on your bike or something and head there, or?
Well, it wasn't exactly just down the road, and I did get on my bike to go there from the time I could. My dad would let me ride my bike to Aunt Peggy's house from the time I was 8. And it was a good 5 miles away, like out in the country, down gravel roads.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a long ways away. I'm a Gen Xer, we rode our bikes a long ways.
Yep. Yeah.
As long as you were home before the street lights came on, it was not a
Exactly.
big deal. Everybody did it.
Right, right. And I did a lot of bike riding, but I don't think I did 5 miles. I remember like finding out that our school, which we thought was forever away, was like a quarter mile away. So yeah, 5 miles is a
Yeah,
long
no,
way.
it was a ways out. It was a ways
Yeah,
out. I tolerate getting chased by dogs on the way there, so just so that I could go and ride horses.
right. That's really cool. So you were pretty young, like, well, from a super young age, you had horses around you, but then you said you went to live with Aunt Peggy around 12. Um,
Yep,
did you, I mean, did you start thinking about doing it professionally then? So it started
a
pretty
little bit.
young as well.
Yeah, yeah, a little bit I did. One of my older cousins had a relationship with a local trainer where she would go and that trainer would groom her to campaign her Western pleasure horses. And so I just thought that was the coolest thing. She got to wear really cool clothes, like
Mhm.
colored jeans and these shirts that I really liked, and everything matched. Like the
Uh-huh.
hat matched the shirt and the pants and the boots and the whole thing. And I was infatuated with her chaps and the whole thing. I just thought it was, it also, triggered my creative needs and I just thought that was super neat. Yeah. So by the time I would see her do her thing with the local trainer, I really started to get interested in, um, wanting to make a livelihood out of, knowledge of horses.
Right. That's cool. So you mentioned campaigning horses a couple of times. What is that?
So anytime, um, not anytime, but a lot of times when horses are owned by someone who there's purpose for that person is to be resold, they'll get more money for them if they can show them successfully in whatever sport or discipline they choose. So, my cousin's trainer was a Western pleasure trainer, and so in order to get more money for her horses, she needed those horses to get time in a show ring and do well. And because my cousin was a minor, then she could show those horses in the amateur classes and be competitive. Whereas if she had been an adult or if she'd been getting paid, she'd have to show them in the open classes and it'd be more competitive. And the same thing with my granddad and the barrel horses, right? And to get the most amount of money, you got to get people to see and want your horse, right? So
Right.
if you go to the rodeo and kick some butt on a pretty regular basis, that's going to draw some attention, and you'll get competing offers and things like that. So, and you'll find it in any sport, eventing or dressage or cutting or reining, that they say,
Right.
a trainer who sells horses for that discipline campaigns them in their sport.
Okay. Okay, cool. And I knew that was the thing. I just didn't know the term for it. So that's cool. So a lot of people know you as Coach Kristi. So you've been doing this now professionally for quite some time, like a couple
15 years.
15 years, so not quite a couple
15.
decades. And one of the things I really appreciate about you is your willingness to share the things that you're learning, like even right now, like you're posting things on Facebook and sharing about your horses and things that have been challenging for you, and I really appreciate that you do that. So what would you say, what's one of the biggest lessons that horses have brought to you?
It's a really difficult question to answer because it's like literally everything about my life has been changed as I learn and understand more. And it's just, layer upon layer. But that's Maxie in the poster behind me.
Right.
And she would have been the first horse to teach me something. My childhood horses, would have had a lot to teach me if I'd been ready for it, but they were more like protectors. That they gave me a place to go where I felt safe and accepted and loved. But Maxie's first lesson to me, because you know her, but I'll describe
Mhm.
her. I call her my short-eared mule, right? Because she's super opinionated and really not interested in most human things. It's really every interaction is negotiated. And I when I first got her, let's see, she's 20. So I would have been 27. So in my late 20s, because she's been with me her whole life. I bought her the day she was born. She is not the kind of horse that you can intimidate into getting something done. You cannot whack her to get her to do it. So in my 20s and early 30s, even still, was my go-to move, right? The reason I could get some stuff done with horses was because I was kind of forceful, in a feminine kind of way, but I was still just forcing them, and mostly just out persisting. But you cannot out persist this horse, and if all you're using is pressure, she does not care. She has a huge tolerance for being uncomfortable. She just would look at you and like smirk, like, is that it? So her first lesson to me was to like, it's okay to soften, right? I had spent a lot of time in my teens and 20s developing a pretty hard outer shell because life sucked. And so, I had a very typical sort of type A way of seeing things. Like, if you want something done, you got to do it yourself. And, I don't need anybody else's help. I'm going to do it. And no matter what it takes, I'm going to get this done.
Right.
And Maxie's response to that was, I don't think so. And so anytime I would try to force her to do something, she would buck. Like I have had, a lifetime of experience with horses, and that is the horse I've been bucked off the most. My most advanced, partner has unloaded me more times than I can remember. I have no idea. I lost count a long time ago.
Right.
So she had to, do that quite a number of times before I could learn to realize that the problem wasn't her. I was the problem. And I think that's really the lesson that sparked it all, was just her getting me to realize that being forceful isn't always the best way to go. That sometimes you might need to listen to your partner and, understand what their needs are. And, if you get good at providing for them, then maybe they'll be a bit more willing to meet you somewhere. But she was my best teacher and showed up exactly at the right time I needed her too.
Well, and it's really interesting too, with what you shared about your childhood, that, one of the things that you had to do to protect yourself was to have that hard shell.
Yeah.
And
I was the tough kid. I was proud of being a tough kid. I was a tomboy. I was proud of that. I had very little interest in being perceived as feminine, because to me that got equated with being weak, and not because I'm not a particularly feminine person. I just saw it as a weakness.
Right.
And so, that whole process from 0 to 27 had me pride myself on how tough I was, right? Like, I have a tattoo on my left shoulder, not because I love the idea of tattoos. I got it to prove how tough I was. At 22 years old, I wasn't that tough. That hurt. Right. But yeah. So she came along at a time where I was at a crossroads, and if I didn't learn to soften, my relationship with her wasn't the only one that was teetering. It was pretty much any relationship I had that I cared about was on the brink of breakdown because of my direct linedness. Yeah.
It's super interesting because, I'm thinking about how that was a strength for you. It was how you survived, and you prided yourself on it too. I'm totally relating to this, by the way, because I didn't have a tough childhood, but I learned from a young age that, like, my dad used to really think it was really cute when I'd be tough. So I was like, okay, cool. This is the way to, be. Yep. And part of that, so that was a strength of mine, but then, like you're saying with her, it didn't get you anywhere, so it had become a weakness. And the other thing about being like that is you don't have a need to listen and have a conversation.
Right.
You're just going about your thing, right? So you
Yeah.
really had to make a change or get a different horse. Like, so that kind of intrigues me. Like, why did you stick with her?
Right. So another sort of side effect from the childhood that I had was that I don't enter into a partnership lightly, whether it's with, you know, a intimate partner, a friend, or my equine partners. If I invite someone into my life on an intimate basis, I intend to see it through no matter what, basically.
Yeah.
Maybe to a fault. Because, you know, as a kid, I experienced a lot of, you know, breakups. And it always, as an observer, you know, a child observer, it just seemed to me that they weren't trying hard enough, that they were, you know, just everybody's looking for a way out. And and I raised Maxie from a baby. I ordered her from the universe. Like, she has a full brother, and I met him as a yearling while she was in utero. And I loved him. He was black and white. I'd always wanted a black and white paint. And he was sassy and big and dramatic, you know, all checked in all the boxes. But the woman who owned him wasn't interested in selling him. She loved him too. And so I went to the breeder and asked, you know, I want that horse. Like, but if it could be a filly, that'd be great. And the following June, she calls me up and says, "Hey, your horse was born last night." And when I tell you it was love at first sight, it absolutely 100% was. The second I saw her with my eyeballs, I'm like, yep, that's my horse. And started making payments on her because I couldn't even afford to buy her. Like, she was $1,000 as a weanling, which to me in the what was it, 2001, that was a ton of money.
Yeah.
So I made payments on her until she was weaned. And, you know, so I was already madly in love with her. So, you know, for me, that's just like, there's no way. A horse that I raised from a baby, there's a reason why I don't breed my mares. Because they would not be, it would be a resale fail. Like, every baby I'm raising is probably going to stay with me. So, when I, you know, enter into those kinds of partnerships, it might take me a while to decide to do it, but once I do decide to do it, I'm married. I'm not dating. Like, I'm gonna, you know, aside from, you know, we all have our non-negotiables that, like, if somebody crossed that line, that you wouldn't stay. But outside of that, I'm ready to negotiate just about any difficulty.
Right. And like you'd said, that you don't enter partnerships lightly. You probably would have seen those non-negotiables before you know, entered into the partnership. Yeah. And I felt I had enough confidence in myself as a budding horse trainer that if she, you know, whatever problems she might have, that I should be able to help her with. And if I can't, if I had to sell her for behavioral issues, that would just make me feel like a failure. Like, there's no way. I'd have to admit defeat. Come on, Molly. I can admit defeat. Not giving up that easily.
I have another right now that I'm in that situation with. I'm like, well, I might not ever ride you very much, but you live here forever.
Right. I have one of those too. I'm determined to learn as much as I can, whether I get back on or not. So, yeah.
Right.
And now it's time for a short commercial break. It's hard to believe that it's been almost 2 years since I embarked on this new adventure of putting together virtual clinics. They've become such a special way to study with a variety of horsemen and women from no matter where you are in the world. I'm excited to let you know about the newest virtual learning opportunity coming your way March 19th. Raising the Bar virtually is a chance for you to learn with two of the most dedicated and accomplished horse developers I know, John and Kathy Barr. In this 3-week interactive clinic, they'll introduce you to a framework of 5 key ingredients to have with your horse while riding. Not only will you learn how to practice these key elements, but you'll learn why they're important and how they can inform you about your horse's mental, emotional, and physical state. You'll build more refined communication while riding and a better understanding of how to improve for the future. You can learn more at shinealightproductions.net. I hope you'll join us. And now, back to the interview with Kristi. So you've talked about this concept, and I don't know if I'm going to use the right terminology, but, and I don't remember where I heard you talk about it. I think it was either on one of your Facebook videos or when I came and watched you teach a clinic. But you were talking about this idea that our emotional states have different
Frequencies.
different frequencies. And that really kind of caught my attention. And so I'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah, I'd love to tell you. It is in my book, my new book with Linda, how to develop emotional fitness in horses.
Okay.
But so I'm a nerd. So
I am
constantly, I'm constantly reading, and it's always a train. Like this book recommended that one, and so on and so on. Yep. And sometimes a book that gets recommended, you get a chapter in, and you're like, no, that's not for me. But one of the books I read that I learned. Well, let me back it up a little bit. Before any of this happened, when I was on the Pirelli faculty team, I think it was probably like 2008. David Ulloa from Florida, the shark whisperer guy, came in as an animal behavioralist, right? I mean, we're studying horse behavior, but mammals are similar in lots of ways, and he's an avid horse lover too. So he came. We invited him to come because he's friends with Pat and Linda and that sort of thing. And so we invited him to come and talk about what he does. And one of the, he goes through his whole spiel about his passion for sharks and how they're really misunderstood, and that we need to do better for them because they keep balance in the ecosystem in the ocean. And if we lose them, all kinds of things will get out of whack. And so, he gives the whole spiel, and then, he opens it up for questions. And the first question, he says he always gets asked this question first, like, how do you not get eaten by a shark? Like, he swims with great whites and the whole thing. It's not like just swimming with, the smaller, less dangerous ones. Like, he's swimming with giant, scary sharks. And he said, he said that sharks have a sensory perception that isn't sonar, it isn't sight, it isn't sound or anything like that, but they have a way of perceiving the emotional state of the organisms around them, and they will deliberately be drawn to frequencies or emotional states that are in distress, right? So a lot of times people who get bitten by sharks, it's because they're like exerting themselves, and that puts their body in a fight or flight mode, and that triggers the shark to think that they'd have a better chance at a successful hunt. So he said, I simply tell the sharks with my body language and with my energy, I am not food. So that's, and David in that lecture to us mentioned that he got the sense that horses have that sense as well, right? That they have a sensitivity to our thoughts and emotions. And at the time when he said it, I'm like, yeah, of course they do. And then my brain was like, well, you're not very careful with those things sometimes, and so that kind of started me on the journey of thinking about it. But a couple of years ago, somehow I got led to a book called Becoming Supernatural by Dr. Joe Dispenza. And it's really very like black and white in the book. It's well researched and evidence-based information that we emit an EMF, right? Electromagnetic field, and our EMF will change frequencies depending on how we feel and what we're thinking. Even like different parts of us emit different frequencies. So the strongest frequency, like the one that'll reach the farthest, comes from our brain because it's the largest organ, and then our heart is the next strongest. But imagine then the reverse of that with horses. Their heart is bigger than their brain, so their frequency is strongest emanating from the heart intelligence, and ours comes from our brain intelligence. And all of that's been documented through the Heart Math Institute, with all kinds of sciencey stuff that I don't pretend to understand or know. But Dr. Dispenza charted emotional frequencies, and what he discovered was that the more like positive or empowering the emotion is that you're experiencing, the higher the frequency is. So what happens when we have a higher frequency is our molecules start to vibrate faster, and it causes the very little parts of us that are actually physical, which is very small percentage of who we actually are. It actually separates them more, and we become more spacious, right? We become more energy. And then the more disempowering or negative the emotions are, the frequency slows down. So that causes the molecules to come closer together, and we become more dense. So more matter and less energy. So my hypothesis is, and it's just my guess, is that when we vibrate at neutral or higher, so a neutral vibration, I believe, is 250 hertz. If we can keep our vibration above 250, then our horses have a better chance of perceiving us as a source of harmony. But if our frequency gets below 250, then we're dangerous. We get perceived as something that they should defend themselves from. And they do it in different ways. When Maxie needs to defend herself from me, she just shuts down, right? She just plants her butt and refuses to move, where a more tense horse like pull on you and try to get away. So what I also found interesting about all of that was two of the emotions that vibrate the lowest are shame and guilt. Not frustration or anger. Yeah.
One of the things that pops into my mind as you're saying this is, I think a lot of us hear these things and then start going, oh no, like,
and then what if it's a snowball?
Yeah, like, oh, I was frustrated the other day, or what if I don't have a high enough frequency, like, and I could see that you kind of get feeling shameful or guilty.
Frustration and anger vibrate. I might not be exact, but I'm pretty sure it's around 150 hertz. Shame and guilt vibrate at 30 and 20 hertz. So the only thing that vibrates at nothing, at zero, it is dead. If something, a mass is vibrating at zero, the energy of that thing has left it, right? So it's there's no vibration. So it's unhealthy for you to vibrate down there. But the opposite, I think, is really exciting too, in that love vibrates at 500. So that's well above neutral. And then joy is actually higher than love, and it vibrates at 540. So for me, learning to be able to, on purpose, pull up a joyful feeling is a critical component to having a partnership with a horse. It's literally so for me, pressure and release is great. I don't, obviously I use that, I don't have a problem with the word obedience, but, especially when I'm on the 1,200 pound animal that might like do all kinds of crazy stuff. I like it when she does what I ask her to.
Right.
Find that comforting. Right. But at the same time, I don't want that to be the only reason she does what I ask her to do. So if all we do is pressure and release, then all we're teaching our horses is to hunt for the conversation to be over, right? So what do I got to do to get you to stop whacking me? What do I got to do to get you to stop poking me and pulling me and things like that? Nothing about the interaction is pleasing. What's pleasing is when it's over.
Right.
Whereas instead, if we can use pressure to guide our horses towards lightness,
mm-hmm.
and then have a joyful feeling while we're interacting,
mm-hmm.
the interaction itself becomes reinforcing, right? My guess is that because we're both social species, we crave that kind of interaction, right?
Mm-hmm.
That feeling of synergy, that one mind kind of like, I'm not sure if that was you or if that was me kind of feeling,
right.
that we can do that when we come together, we can do more than either of us could do alone.
Mm-hmm.
And without the ability to have a joyful feeling in the moments that it is light and harmonious, then it's not reinforcing. There's no, positive reinforcement to it. It's all you can hope for is that your horse learns how to shut you up, right? They learn how to get you to leave them alone or to stop whacking them or pulling on them.
Right.
So for me, it's super important. That's always been a big deal to me, is that I don't want to just impose my will on my horses. And I know, there's lots of words out there that I don't always necessarily resonate with, including like alpha and dominant and the leader even. I like to be the decision maker for sure. But I also want to hear what my horse has to say about what we're up to. And I wanted to be the kind of leadership that she finds joy in me being the leader, not just relief. Relief is great. It points you in the right direction, but I want her to feel good about me being the leader. An example for me in human terms is a lot of people perceive me as a dominant person. I come across that way, I've been told. But that doesn't mean I always want to be the leader. There's a lot of pressure and responsibility that comes with that. Right. And so I married a man who knows when to be the leader and when to let me lead. And in those moments where I need him to step up and take care of things, when he does, I feel so much affection for him, like so much joy and appreciation for that. And that's how I want my horses to feel, like, oh, good, Kristi's got a handle on it. Right. And I know she can, she'll take care of the situation, versus like, well, I better do what I'm told or she's going to get mad. Right. I don't ever want that kind of relationship with them. So the concept of emotional frequencies has completely changed how I interact, not just with my horses, but with everyone. And that doesn't mean I don't use the contracted emotions. There, the below 250 emotions. If I deliberately don't want to talk to someone or have them participate in my life, I can pull those up pretty easily and repel someone on purpose. Like that's, I think, legit, and but for the people who think that they can't do that, it's just a discipline. It just requires practice. So I've had lots of weird experiences throughout my life, but one of the things I did in college was I took an acting class. It was an acting for television course. So one of the types of nerds I was in school was a theater nerd. It was lots of kinds of nerds. The music nerd, I was an academic nerd, and I was a theater nerd.
Yeah, that's good. You're well-rounded. You're well-rounded in your nerddom. That's good.
I have lots of facets of nerddom. But so in this class we did a lot of different exercises around how to portray honest emotions. And a lot of it's a little unhealthy. I think that's why actors are nuts, because if they're good, they actually feel the emotions that they're really going through it. It's not pretend, like it's actually happening in their system. So that's why they get a little loony. But one of the things we were taught how to do was how to smile for photos, right? It's like to get headshots and stuff. So it's how to smile in a way that produces a natural smile. And the concept is easy. Like, have a thought, a memory, or even, something that you made up in your head that really reliably just causes you to smile. It could be, about your horse or a spouse or a memory or a dream, just anything that naturally causes you to smile. And what I've discovered over the years of using that, because as instructors, we get asked to have our picture taken somewhat regularly.
Mm-hmm.
And you can always tell the days that I forget to use that technique because my smile looks forced.
Right.
But what I realized, though, is that I don't need the memory anymore. I don't need the imagery anymore. I have a muscle memory for what joy feels like in my nervous system. And as long as I'm not triggered, right, it's harder to do if you're like hijacked by your limbic system and full on fight or flight. Then you're dealing, hormones and stuff. But as long as I'm not triggered, I have a muscle memory. I know where that feeling lives in my nervous system, and I can pull it up, pretty reliably anytime I want. And then, when you're with your horses, that should be easy.
Right.
I don't know if of course you remember Satori, right? I lost her in March. I put her down in March, but she was quite the little handful of a girl. And I love that about her. And she would often do things that had the potential to trigger me, to get frustrated or angry.
Right.
And when she was little, I used to say to her, "You little shit." And I started to realize that was not helping, right? That was pulling my frequency down. And it was, for her, when given the choice between fight or flight, she would choose fight, right? So if my frequency got low and she felt she needed to defend herself, then she was ready to fight with me. But if instead I could say, "I love you," right? Every time she'd do something kind of sassy or naughty, and I meant it, it wasn't like I didn't mean it when I would say it. "I love you." And I'd say it out loud because that's the weirdo I am. I could pull my frequency up pretty quick and she'd stop fighting me. So I think that we all have some version of that, that little girl or that little boy that just the minute you knew or understood what a horse was, you needed it.
Yes.
Right? We're still the weird, crazy horse kids that if you pass a pasture and you see horses in the field, you think, "Are you happy? Are you having a good life?"
Yeah.
Right. And or a horse trailer passes you on the road, you think, "Ooh, where are you going? I bet you're having fun today. Can I come?"
Right.
That kind of thing. We get excited no matter what the scenario is, and we just need to stay connected to that. I think sometimes we just take it all a bit too seriously. And, one of the things I'm famous for saying is, I used to say, "We're not curing cancer here, folks." But now I'll say, "We're not curing COVID here, folks." Right. But there's a time and a place to be serious. We need to have reverence for safety things. But whether or not my horse will put 2 feet on the trailer or perform a clean flying change or, whatever it is, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. Right. It's not life or death in those examples. So when you are, like you said, when you get triggered, and that your emotions, the frequencies are low, what do you do? Do you leave the situation, or have you practiced the higher frequencies enough that they're, like you said, they're automatic? Could you what would you coach someone to do?
Yeah. So they're not automatic for me. I still have moments where I get triggered. So, don't beat yourself up if you don't get it perfect tomorrow. But a couple of things, I keep reminding myself that, being grateful is the pathway to positive emotions no matter what. Right. And, so I tried, before it gets too far gone in my nervous system, in my bloodstream and things like that, I try to keep reminding myself of a couple of things. First, how lucky I am to have this creature in my life, right? I desperately love all of my horses. And the flip side to that, and I'll try to say it without getting emotional, but losing Satori this year, really put the nail on the head for that one. I don't miss not being able to do flying changes with her. I miss her. Right. I don't need, tasks or behaviors from her. If somebody gave me one more day with her, I wouldn't ride her. I just want to be with her. I just want to hang out with her and spend that time. And no matter how young they are or what your plans are for that horse, someday you're probably going to have to put them under the ground. And I'm going to tell you right now, that sucks.
Right.
And the things that I think about now aren't the things that we didn't accomplish.
Right.
My regrets are around losing my cool with her. I regret anytime I might have gotten frustrated or angry. And just, I wish I would have spent more time. And I spent a ton of time with that horse. But if I knew then what I know now, I'd spend double, triple, quadruple as much time as I could squeeze in every day with her. I wouldn't make a single excuse not to. So that's been a big deal to me. Now, all of that philosophical making you cry stuff aside, you know, a basic understanding of your nervous system and how things work is important too, right? So you can't wish it away, right? And so if you get triggered and you feel your frequency get pulled below the 250, and I have some red flags physically in my body, like my personality has me tighten in the throat and chest when I start to get pulled, because I too am the animal that if given the choice between fight or flight, I will pretty regularly choose fight. So I feel a growl come up in my chest, like, Urgh. And so if I catch it soon enough, then I can use a breathing technique to release it. So there's lots of strategies around breath work to release tension, right? There's the 4 breath one that this Navy SEALs use, where you
square
breathe in for 4. Square breathing. That's what. You breathe in for 4, hold for 4, breathe out for 4, hold that for 4, until you feel everything relax. And then there's another strategy that says that if you breathe in fast and in your nose and out slow through the mouth, if the out breath is longer than the in, that also triggers the parasympathetic, gets you back into rest and recovery. But the other thing, a couple other things, is to understand that not only have you triggered your nervous system, you've triggered biochemicals in your body. So if you've flooded your system with stress hormones, you're going to have to move to get it out. You can't stand there. So oftentimes I'll just walk around the arena. I'll get down if I'm riding. And then I'll walk around the arena and choose one of those breathing exercises until I feel a sense of relief from the stress hormones, right? And then recently, and it's not particularly convenient, but an important piece of our anatomy to get familiar with is the vagal nerve system, right? So there's a nerve that connects our heart with our head, and information gets shared back and forth through the vagus nerve. And a lot of studies show that the heart's actually telling the brain more than the brain is telling the heart. There is a type of intelligence in the nervous system that's in our heart. But a couple of things that can help the vagus nerve to trigger your parasympathetic is apparently it works better if you're lying down, but I've never tried it lying down in the arena. But there's something about turning your head to one side as far as you can, and then looking as far as you can in that direction. And it almost always gets me to yawn if I do it long enough. You do that both ways until it triggers a yawn, and a yawn is a good indication that you are returning to the parasympathetic. And I haven't tried this one, but I'm keen to getting something cold on your chest, like right here on your sternum, because that's where the nerve is most closest to the surface. Getting something cold here can also trigger the parasympathetic. And then, I use essential oils and all that stuff. I usually have lavender pretty handy if I feel like it could be a stressful, interaction, things like that. But also, if I just feel like I can't get my frequency wrangled, I just put my horse away. Like I obviously need more information. The only time we get that frustrated or angry or worried is when we don't know what to do. So, and lucky for me, I have Linda at the end of a text. I can just like, hey, this is what happened today. Yeah. Fix it.
Right.
And get pretty good feedback.
Yeah. And I think that's so helpful to hear that, you've been really interested in all of this for a long time, and you've been, studying it and practicing it, but still there are times that you need to completely leave. Because I think sometimes we get it in our head that, oh, well, you don't need to do that anymore, or, you've got it all figured out, right? And but it's so good to know that it's everybody needs to kind of practice similar things. You don't just get to reach a certain place and never have to practice it anymore. It gets easier. Like you said, the
Right.
joy response is much more available now.
Right.
But if you stopped practicing it, it wouldn't be, right? Like
Right.
you have to keep going with it. So that's super, super helpful and so interesting to hear about.
I've never seen Linda lose her cool. So I don't know. I think that some of the reason why I probably still struggle with it is because I had a traumatizing childhood. So I rehearsed those things in myself enough that they're pretty hardwired.
Right.
And I don't really have the expectation that I would ever come to a day where, like, ta-da, I'm like this Zen, like, horse lover that no matter what kind of silliness my horse throws at me, that I'm just okay with it. But I've never seen Linda lose her cool, so I can't say that no one ever achieves that state of like being able to just like be cool no matter what. But I'm not with her all the time too, so who knows?
Right.
I don't know.
Well, and I think part of it is like, one, I love the idea of the more time you put in doing not doing the appropriate things, you're going to get better and better and better, right? So it's just a matter.
I can explain that.
Yeah.
That's also the result of the nervous system, right? The circuits that fire together wire together.
Yes.
And the more often they fire together, the tighter they get wired together, right? So there is a fatty protein that encapsulates the circuitry, that every time you use that circuit, that fatty protein puts a layer on there, a layer of insulation. Mm-hmm. It's called myelin, and the process is called myelination. And so every time you use that circuit, it gets more and more insulated. So the signal gets stronger and faster and like chosen quicker and things like that. So anything like for me that I've been rehearsing since birth, basically, the whole like I can do it myself and I don't need you for anything, and I'm tough, and things like that. That's a lot of years of myelinating. And myelin, once it's been laid down on a circuit, doesn't go away. The only way that you can choose better is by counter conditioning. It's the same with horses too, by the way. You can't undo a behavior. All you can do is train a new behavior that overrides that one, and that it fills the need that behavior did better, and then you can counter condition it. So
but that old behavior, like you're saying, that old behavior it's always going to be available, but
it's in there.
Right. It's in there. Right.
Yeah. Sometimes if the circuit isn't used for long enough, sometimes it does get pruned. That our nervous system is a very efficient system that does not waste energy. So if a branch in your circuitry there is not getting used, and it's wasted space, that could maybe be used for something better. That's why we're such an evolving species, that it has a lot to do with it. And so in our sleep, those circuits that haven't been used for a super long time do get marked. And if they get marked often enough, then they do get pruned. But I don't have any clue how long that takes. And I think it depends on how much myelin is on the circuit. So if I've been myelinating a circuit since birth and I'm 47, I don't really expect those circuits to probably get pruned. They're just going to be, less available, I hope.
Yeah, for sure. But I think, you watch somebody like Linda, and she's been practicing these things from a young age. I mean, she started into personal development and leadership training and all these things at a young age. And I would guess
in her early 20s.
Yeah. I mean, I would guess that she still has these emotions come in, but like, you're talking about counter conditioning them and building new habits. I mean, I think that probably hers just come quickly, and we don't
Yeah.
even see it happen.
Right.
I would guess. I love the idea that we are all works in progress and that we have the opportunity to change our brain and make improvements no matter what stage of life we're in. In part 2 of this conversation, we'll explore the obstacles that Kristi has found that get in the way of students making progress. She'll also share about the new program that she's teaching that's been developed by Linda Pirelli. She'll share with us how it's different than the Pirelli program and also how it's a complementary addition. I hope you'll tune in. And then, if you haven't already, I'd love for you to follow or subscribe to this podcast. And if you know folks that you think would benefit from listening, please share. And finally, I'd love to invite you to join a Learner's Journey Facebook group. It's a private group for folks who listen to this podcast, and they're from all over the world, and it's designed for us to be able to share our journeys and support each other along the way. So I'd love for you to join in. A link is in the show notes. I hope you take a moment or two today and in the days ahead to practice joy. And I am grateful that you're here, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.